About 13 years ago, the United States experienced one of history's most terrifying terrorist attacks, September 11, 2001. Although the U.S. should be taking precautions, has the news media taken the precautions too far? The 9/11 attacks are now being blamed on an entire religion itself rather than the individuals responsible. Muslims now fall under a negative stereotype which has affected their everyday lives for over a decade now.
According to our textbook, stereotypes is a widely held belief about a group of people. Stereotypes often operate at an unconscious level and tend to be very persistent. A lot of times, this can turn into prejudice, an attitude usually negative about a cultural group of people with little or no evidence. Prejudice is how a person feels about a culture, whereas stereotypes tell us what we should believe about a culture. Does the American media and people know what the religion of Islam is really about? Or are they giving into stereotypes and prejudice? Assalamu alaikum. This is the Islamic greeting, which literally means peace be upon you. Islam preaches peace, tolerance, and forgiveness. As a Muslim, you must follow the 5 pillars of Islam, which are to fast during the month of Ramadan, make a trip to Mecca, donate to charity, pray, and declare the belief that there is a God, only one God, and that Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. As a child, pre-9/11, I never realized that my religion could be so controversial. I would attend Friday prayer in Sunday school, and was always taught to be accepting of everyone, no matter what their background was. My Hafiz, which is a priest, told us that if a Jew is a Jew and a Christian is a Christian, then love them because Allah intended it to be that way. Allah, which is often misconstrued or misunderstood as an idol, is just the Arabic term for God. I have Christian friends from the Middle East who speak fluent Arabic and have crucifixes with Allah printed on them. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all stem from the same beliefs and have much more in common than you would assume. You wouldn't know this because the way the media manipulates society's views on Muslims. I never thought my religion or the way others would view it would be such an issue. My family and I are very liberal and we're assimilated into American culture. That helped, but we still face our fair share of discrimination. I was lucky enough to grow up with the same group of kids, same group of friends from elementary throughout high school. So whenever I ever faced prejudice, they would stick up for me. I might have been young, but I still remember pre-9/11 as a Muslim in America. I was never ridiculed, nor was I asked questions or associated with terrorists. Prior to 9/11, I would never be ashamed to let anyone know about my religion. Post 9/11, I would definitely reserve that information in fear of being judged or not accepted by my peers. It all changed because of the negative coverage we received and the way Muslims were being depicted. In the year before 9/11, the American news media only reported about Muslims 214 times. The year after, it had increased significantly.
After the September 11th attacks, the news reports from 4 different news stations about Muslims and Arabs skyrocketed to a total of 653 reports within a 6-month period. The 6 months preceding the 9/11 attacks, there was a total of only 59 reports from the same 4 news stations. Media on average increased in the news about Muslims and Arabs by about 25% after the attacks. The coverage of Muslims increased in both cable and print media. CNN aired 203 segments about Muslim Americans during the first 6 months after 9/11, compared to the 23 segments during the 6 months before 9/11. The news reports after the 9/11 attacks frame Muslims and Arabs in a negative way. According to Severin and Tinker, they argue that repeated coverage of Muslims as terrorists in the media leads to the belief that they are actually terrorists. When you turn on the TV and watch the news, they're usually reporting something about terrorism and linking terrorism to Muslims and Arabs. The problem is not the lack of Muslim coverage in the news, but the way the media frames Muslims and Arabs that conveys a negative stereotype which affects the public perception. Some American people who see people dressed as Muslims automatically associate them with terrorism. According to a public opinion poll after 9/11, 60% of the people favored racial profiling of Muslims and Arabs. Although terrorists are Muslims does not mean all Muslims are terrorists. The racial targeting of Muslims and Arabs for no reason other than religion is ethically wrong. Judging people by how they dress and/or religion they practice is wrong. It's exactly like judging a book by its cover. Although 9/11 was a horrific event and the U.S. should take precautions, does not mean the media should associate and assume false stereotypes of all Muslims and Arabs. The media magnifies this stereotypical problem by associating terrorism with Muslims. The media did not report facts about the war in Iraq, but instead exaggerated the facts to fuel the hatred for Muslims and Arabs, according to CSUN EDU.
Political correctness, please. It's illegal, it's unconstitutional, unethical, immoral. It shouldn't be done. We do not, in this country, prejudge a person based upon their race, creed, color, country of national origin. And it's wrong to do so. In addition, it's not effective. It doesn't work. It actually perpetuates the problem. That is, it separates us.
From my personal experience in 2004, flying back to Houston from Orlando after the shoe bombings, my little brother, who was 4 years old at the time, was forced to take off his shoes and was extensively searched for bombs because of his name, Richard Safar. There was no evidence or rational reason for my 4-year-old brother to be searched for bombs other than racial profiling. Just imagine if that was your 4-year-old child being searched for no rational reason.
Okay, so let's take a look at 10 years after the attacks. As stated by Christopher Smith in the Journal of Religion and Society, a gradual increase of animosity toward Islam during the period from 2002 to 2010 coincided with the growth of partisan difference in assessments of the faith. This is likely because right and left-leaning media outlets used increasingly divergent frames to represent Islam over the course of the decade. Although now 10 years down the road, some survey data finds that the animosity had not been driven by fear of terrorism, but by personal belief instead, or impact of social media on personal belief. The kind of Muslim Americans in the media portrayed negative were still at an oddly high number. This, which was also stated by Christopher Smith, this related to the idea that fear of terrorism has not been the primary driver of prejudice, is the fact that unfavorable media framing of Islam has not been exclusively related to terrorism and violence. Now, with actual facts and data also comes a lot of emotional connection, especially to those Muslim Americans that are simply trying to live in this country. According to Joseph Maiden in Women in the World, more than a decade on from 9/11, young Muslim American women still report experiencing suspicion and discrimination. You would imagine that a wound would close 10 years after it happened, right? The attacks of 9/11 have left an entire country with scars, but it does not seem fair that the entire Muslim religion have to emotionally pay the consequences that someone else should be taking responsibility for. As Melissa stated before, yes, the 9/11 terrorists were Muslim, but that does not mean that all Muslims are terrorists. One of my closest friends, Oneida, converted from Catholic to Muslim in 2009. Oni, as I call her, is a student now at University of Houston. She came to UTSA her first 2 years, but is now back home. She converted, like I said, in 2009, which was 8 years after the attacks. Oni did not feel like she belonged in the religion she was a part of before, therefore looked into different religions. She came across Muslim and felt like she could completely relate to the Quran. Not too long ago, as her and her boyfriend were arriving to a restaurant, cops asked her boyfriend if they had bombs in their car simply because she was wearing her hijab. Oni is as happy as this can be, but she does wish that being Muslim in America wasn't so difficult to deal with.
As stated by Muhammad Abid Amiri in the essay of Islam and Muslim Societies, the cultivation theory suggests exposing the public to recurrent negative images about Muslims resulted in convincing Americans that the threat from Muslims is real. The media has a great influence in changing public perceptions. Once the media stops connecting Islam with terrorism, then so will the American public. Muslim Americans that move here to simply try to live a better life are Americans.